Rain hammered the black umbrellas like tiny, angry fists as I stood alone at the edge of my mother's grave in the little cemetery tucked behind Emerald Meadows, HOA. The manicured lawns of our so-called paradise stretched out beyond the iron fence, every blade exactly 2 3/4 inches tall, because Karen Mitchell, the HOA president, had sent out that memo last month threatening $500 fines for anything taller. Mourners huddled in small clusters, their whispers drowned by the downpour, but I could still hear the click of Karen's sensible heels on the wet pavement as she approached me, clutching a clipboard like it was the Ten Commandments. "Brittany, my dear, we are all so devastated about Eleanor," she cooed in that syrupy voice she used at every board meeting, the one that made you want to scream while smiling back. She always kept her azaleas in compliance, you know. Such a model resident. Her eyes flicked to the fresh mound of dirt, as if measuring it for code violations. I nodded numbly, my heels sinking into the mud the same way my stomach had sunk when the hospital called 2 days earlier. "Heart attack," they said. "Closed casket preservation issues." My mother, Eleanor Thompson, who had lived in this neighborhood for 28 years, fighting Karen's ever-changing covenants, now reduced to a hole in the ground and a bouquet of wilting lilies. Aunt Susan caught my eye from across the grave, her face tight with the same suspicion I felt. Dad was nowhere, no text, no call, just like the Instagram post Karen had liked 3 hours ago. Her and her vice president Miranda Voss sipping cocktails on a community planning retreat in Palm Springs. "New horizons for Emerald Meadows," the caption read. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I shouldn't check it here, but hope is a cruel thing. "Sorry, honey, emergency. HOA vote in Scottsdale, be home soon." The message blurred through raindrops or maybe tears. I swiped it away and opened Instagram anyway. There they were, Karen and Miranda, arms around each other in front of swaying palms. I remembered the scene 3 months earlier in my mother's cozy sunroom where she hosted her little home art shows. Karen had stormed in, clipboard in hand. "Eleanor, these easels violate Section 7.3, no commercial activity in residential zones." Mom had stood her ground, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "It's my home, Karen, and my art." Karen had smiled, that same smile she was giving me now. "Rules are rules, dear, for the harmony of the community." The funeral director touched my elbow. "Miss Thompson, whenever you're ready." I dropped the ceremonial dirt, the clods thudding like finality. As the crowd drifted away, Karen lingered. "We'll need you to sign some paperwork tomorrow, Brittany. Property transfer forms, your mother's estate. Standard procedure when a homeowner passes. We can't have liens affecting neighborhood values." Her tone was all sympathy, but her eyes glittered with something colder. I mumbled something about needing time. Karen patted my shoulder. "Of course, dear. Grief makes people irrational. Just remember the covenants still apply, even in mourning. No black crepe on the door that's a visual nuisance." The drive home through our cookie-cutter streets felt surreal. Every house, identical beige, paint approved shade number 412, no political flags, no garden gnomes, because Karen had banned them last year, calling them tacky distractions. My apartment above the garage of Mom's old house felt hollow. I kicked off mud-caked heels, peeled off the soak coat, and stared at the framed photo on my dresser mom at her last art show, champagne raised in triumph. "You always fought for what was yours," I whispered. Unlike me, I'd spent my architectural career designing subdivisions, ironically enforcing other people's rules while living under Karen's thumb, always trying to stay under the radar. My phone rang, Karen's name flashing. I answered against my better judgment. "Brittany, we need to discuss the estate transfer tomorrow. Your mother's lot is prime for the new community center expansion I've been proposing. Signatures as next of kin." Her voice was all business, no trace of the funeral condolences. I asked for time. The silence stretched. "Time is compliance, Brittany," she snapped, then softened instantly. "The board is expecting resolution. Your mother would want the neighborhood to move forward." The line went dead. Outside, thunder growled across the perfectly trimmed lawns, lightning flashing over identical roofs. I pressed my palm to the cold window. "I won't let you erase her," I whispered to the storm. At midnight, my phone buzzed again. I've been sitting in darkness for hours, rain still lashing the windows. The contact name stopped my heart. Mom. Fingers trembling, I opened it. I'm not dead. Come to the cemetery now. The windshield wipers slapped furiously as I raced back through the sleeping streets of Emerald Meadows, every house dark behind perfectly drawn blinds, because Karen's covenants banned exterior lights after 10. The gates to the cemetery should have been locked, but they stood open like an invitation. Headlights cut through the downpour, illuminating a silver SUV parked near Mom's fresh grave. A solitary figure waited under the oak tree. My heart slammed against my ribs as I killed the engine and stepped into the storm, abandoning the umbrella entirely. The headlights caught her face, and I froze. It was impossible, yet there she stood, pale, but unmistakably alive. Eleanor Thompson, my mother. Brittany, quickly, we don't have much time, she called over the rain, pulling me toward the SUV. Inside, the sudden silence felt deafening. Water dripped from my hair, pooling on the leather seat. I reached out to touch her cheek, half expecting a ghost. Her skin was warm, real. Ow, my voice cracked. Karen has been threatening me for months, she said quietly, tampering with my heart medication during her so-called wellness visits. You know how she insists on inspecting every home for compliance. Martha Keegan, the retired nurse who lives 3 doors down, noticed something wrong. She saw Karen switching my pills the day before my supposed heart attack. Martha helped me fake the whole thing. There was a car accident victim, similar build, same age. The doctor signed a certificate thinking he was helping a domestic abuse victim escape, an HOA tyrant. I stared, processing the nightmare. The closed casket, the rushed funeral, Karen's absence, not for any retreat, but to celebrate what she thought was success. Mom pulled out her phone and pressed play. Karen's voice filled the car, clinical and cold. She's worth more dead than alive. The recording continued, unfolding the horror. Karen Mitchell, respected HOA president, pillar of Emerald Meadows, had been plotting for months. Miranda Voss wasn't just her vice president, but her partner in everything. It's about control of the neighborhood, my mother explained. My opposition to her redevelopment scheme, the prime lot my house sits on. With me gone, and you manipulated into signing the transfer, Karen would have complete control and cover her embezzlement of HOA fees. The pieces slammed together, the paperwork. She wanted tomorrow, the rush timeline, the Palm Springs retreat. That was really a celebration. Martha smuggled me to a safe house outside the gates. Mom showed documents, offshore accounts, folders of evidence she'd gathered. I stared at the bottle of pills in her hand, not her usual medication, but foreign tablets. He tried to kill you, I whispered, but it was Karen, the woman, who smiled while finding residents for the wrong shade of mulch. Mom nodded, and she would have succeeded if Martha hadn't been watching. A tap on the window made us both jump. Martha Keegan stood in the rain, clutching a folder. Mom unlocked the door, and the nurse slid in, smelling of antiseptic and storm. I brought the updated medical record, she said. Security footage from the community center shows Karen entering your mother's house alone the night before. I tried telling the HOA board, but no one believed me. Karen has too many friends in high places. Martha risked everything, her reputation, her standing in the neighborhood. She saved my life. I saw what she was doing, Martha said simply. I couldn't stand by. Mom's attorney, Charlotte Wells, connected us with the district attorney's white-collar unit. They've been building a case, but we need more evidence of the financial fraud. The weight settled on me. I would need to return home, pretend I knew nothing, act normal around the woman who had tried to murder my mother while citing covenant violations. She can never know I'm alive until we have everything, Martha warned. You'll need to be very careful, Brittany. Karen is watching you closely. The rain eased as we formed a plan. I'd go back before dawn, prepare for tomorrow's meeting, create a diversion by time. Martha explained how to document everything safely. I've seen Karen's type before, she said, her voice hard. Women who think they own the neighborhood, including the people in it. By the time I drove back, the first hint of gray lightened the eastern sky. I was soaked, shaking not just from cold, but from the knowledge burning inside me. My phone buzzed with a text from Karen. 8 a.m. My office at the community center. Bring ID for the notary. Back at the house, I called in sick to my remote architectural job. Karen monitored everything. On my dining table, I created a dummy folder labeled Mom's Estate enough to look legitimate if she searched. The weight of knowing Karen was capable of murder pressed on every breath. But for the first time I saw through her manipulation clearly. The way she positioned herself as the community's savior, the one who knew best. Dawn broke as I changed into dry clothes. In a few hours, I'd sit across from Karen and pretend I didn't know she was a killer. I'd smile and nod and play the grieving daughter while looking for evidence to bring her down. It was terrifying, but for the first time, I saw the neighborhood and Karen with absolute clarity. Rain hammered the floor-to-ceiling windows of the community center office, the sound a relentless backdrop to my racing heart. I stood before Karen's imposing desk, trying to appear composed while my fingers trembled against my thigh. The Emerald Meadows skyline beyond the glass was barely visible through sheets of water. Karen Mitchell looked immaculate in her pastel pantsuit, not a hair out of place despite the storm. Her silver-streaked bob caught the fluorescent light as she slid a leather folder across the glass surface. "Everything is prepared," she said, voice measured and professional. "Standard property transfer documentation for your mother's assets. Just your signature needed here." She tapped a manicured nail on the yellow sticky note. I glanced at the document, my stomach dropping when I saw what looked like Mom's signature already there, perfect in every loop. A forgery. "I'll have time to review these first," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Karen's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes, a crack in the polite veneer. "There's nothing to review, Brittany. It's standard paperwork. Your mother and I discussed all this before her." She paused, clearing her throat before her passing. My gaze drifted past her to the credenza, where framed photos sat Karen and Miranda in Palm Springs, arms around waist, tropical drinks in hand. The caption might as well have read, "Celebrating my neighbor's death." The office door opened without a knock, and Miranda stepped in wearing a cream pencil skirt. Her smile appeared sympathetic, but her eyes calculated. "I brought those projection figures you asked for," she said, placing a folder beside Karen before turning to me. "Brittany, I'm so sorry for your loss. Karen has worked so hard to keep the community together through all this." I nodded stiffly, noting how Miranda positioned herself slightly behind Karen's chair, hand resting possessively on the leather back. "We need to finalize these transfers today," Karen continued, pushing the folder closer. "The board is expecting resolution." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Your mother would want this wrapped up quickly for neighborhood harmony." The mention of Mom shifted something inside me. My eyes drifted to the wall behind Karen, where a community photo hung the board at last year's picnic. But what caught my attention was the slight rectangular outline in the walnut paneling a safe. And as Karen turned to accept the document from Miranda, I caught the keypad 4 digits, still visible, 0427. April 27th, Mom's birthday. "I'll need to review these tonight," I said, reaching for the folder before she could protest. Surprise flickered across Karen's face, quickly replaced by calculated relief. "Of course, good girl." She leaned back, a slight smile playing at her lips. "I always knew you'd understand community values. This transition will be smoother with your cooperation." I tucked the folder into my bag, feeling strangely calm. For the first time, I saw Karen clearly, not as the intimidating president I'd always feared, but as a woman who completely underestimated me. "I'll bring them back tomorrow," I said, turning to leave. "Have Miranda set an appointment?" She called after me. "I've got back-to-back inspections all day." I stepped into the hallway, expecting relief. Instead, I felt clarity, like fog lifting to reveal the absurd terrain of identical houses and tyrannical rules. The elevator doors nearly closed before Miranda's manicured hand stopped them. She slipped inside, her perfume overwhelming. "Karen has been through so much," she said, pressing the lobby button. "Losing Eleanor has been devastating for the neighborhood." I studied her profile, noticing the careful makeup, the practiced sympathy. Interesting choice of words, I responded. Losing her. Miranda's head snapped toward me, composure slipping. Excuse me. People don't usually say someone lost a neighbor when they died. They say they lost them when they go missing or when they're taken. Her perfect complexion flushed. Watch yourself, Brittany. Grief makes people irrational. Actually, I said as the doors opened, I'm thinking more clearly than ever. I crossed the marble floor toward the exit, feeling Miranda's eyes burning into my back. Through the glass, I saw her already on her phone, lips moving rapidly, glancing my way, reporting back to Karen. Something had shifted. For the first time, I'd made Karen Mitchell uncomfortable in her own kingdom of covenants. The afternoon rain had lightened to drizzle as I walked 6 blocks to the corner coffee shop, constantly checking I wasn't followed. Inside, Martha Keegan sat at a corner table, her hospital scrubs replaced by jeans and a raincoat. Beside her was Charlotte Wells, mom's attorney, silver-streaked hair in a severe bun. Brittany, Martha said, standing. This is Charlotte. Charlotte's handshake was firm, her gaze assessing. Your mother speaks highly of you. The district attorney needs concrete evidence of financial fraud. She continued, voice low. They've been watching Karen for months, but they need something definitive. Martha slid her phone across, showing security footage of mom's house. This was taken the night before. Karen entering alone 15 minutes before the first cardiac episode. I watched Karen's familiar figure stride past the birdbath, checking her watch as she pushed open the door. My phone vibrated with an incoming call, unlisted number. I answered hesitantly. Brittany, mom's voice weak but unmistakable. The offshore accounts were just the beginning. Miranda isn't just her vice president, she's her partner in everything. I gripped the phone tighter. How much do they know? A new voice joined. Agent Morales, White Collar Crimes Unit. We have fragments, Miss Thompson, but we need the complete picture. Karen keeps a flash drive in her office safe. That's where she stores everything incriminating, too sensitive for servers. I thought of the safe behind the community photo, the keypad displaying mom's birthday. I know how to get it. Martha leaned forward. How? I've been invisible to Karen my whole life. That's about to become useful. I explained what I'd seen. The safe, the code, my access card that still worked after hours. Charlotte tapped her pen. If you're caught, it's trespassing. I'm a resident entering the community center. And the documents in that safe may prove she tried to kill my mother. Martha, check her watch. I can create a diversion call about a discrepancy in medical records. That should keep security busy for 15 minutes. Charlotte tore a sheet, writing rapidly. I'll have legal representation ready. I looked between these women, strangers days ago, now risking everything. A realization washed over me. My whole life, I've been afraid of her, I whispered. Not anymore. Night fell as I drove back to the community center, city lights reflecting in puddles from the day's rain. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to Karen's moves, I was making my own. The underground parking was nearly empty at 9. I used my resident access card, heart thudding, as the reader blinked green. Martha's diversion had worked, the security desk vacant, a half-eaten sandwich abandoned. I disabled the hallway camera with the jammer Martha provided, then made my way to the executive floor. Each step echoed my breath shallow. Karen's office door yielded to my card. Inside, darkness broken only by streetlights filtering through rain-streaked windows. I moved to the community photo, fingers trembling as I slid it aside, revealing the keypad. 0427. Nothing. I tried again, more carefully. Still nothing. My mind raced. What if she changed it? I closed my eyes, forcing calm. April 27th, mom's birthday, but the HOA was founded in 1987. Maybe 042787. The safe clicked open. Inside, organized with Karen's typical precision folders, labeled offshore bank accounts, transfer records, contracts for shell companies I'd never heard of. And nestled between them a black flash drive labeled confidential. As I pulled it out, something else caught my eye, a photograph of mom, her smiling face marred by a red X drawn across it. My hands shook as I slotted the drive into my laptop, quickly copying its contents. My phone buzzed. Karen Mitchell, you think I wouldn't notice Brittany? A second message followed a security alert showing Karen's car entering the parking garage. I quickly replaced the drive, closed the safe, slid the photo back. The elevator indicator showed the car rising. There was nowhere to run. I stood in the center of the office, evidence clutched in my hand, and made my decision. No more running. My heart pounded as I returned every document exactly as found, pressing one thumb deliberately against the metal edge, leaving a single fingerprint, a calculated breadcrumb. The conference room adjoining offered the only escape, its door ajar, just enough for me to slip through as the elevator dinged. From my hiding place, I watched Karen stride in, with Miranda trailing like a sleek shadow, their reflections distorted in the glass as they moved straight to the safe. "She's been here," Karen muttered, examining the keypad. Miranda pressed a hand against the wall, leaning closer. She couldn't have gotten far. "Security is watching all exits." "Check her office," Karen ordered, slamming the safe shut, rattling the photo. "I want to know exactly what she took." I pressed against the wall as they split up Miranda's heels, clicking toward the elevator while Karen rifled through papers. The moment they were distracted, I slipped into the service corridor, the forgotten passageway maintenance used. Its existence overlooked on schematics, but essential to my architectural knowledge. The flash drive burned in my pocket as I navigated dimly lit halls past storage closets, emerging finally into the parking garage 2 floors below. The next morning, my phone erupted with notifications: 12 missed calls from Karen, 8 from Miranda, 3 voicemails, each more threatening. "Come home, Brittany, let's talk this through like neighbors," my father's voice said in the first, deceptively calm. "The second, whatever you think you have, it won't hold up. You're making a terrible mistake." The third chilled me. "Perhaps another funeral will be needed if this continues. Your choice." When I arrived at the community center, whispers followed me through the corridors. My mailbox slot stood open, though I'd locked it. Inside, drawers hung open, files displaced. From across the lobby, I spotted Miranda, huddled with another board member, both glancing my way. "We're concerned about her mental state," Miranda said loudly enough for me to hear. "Grief affects people in unpredictable ways. By lunchtime, my community account was frozen for your protection during this difficult time," the notification read. Outside my house, that evening, an unfamiliar black sedan idled across the street, occupant obscured. When I drove to the store, the same car followed 3 lengths behind. I didn't return home that night. "You've got enough for us to start moving," Charlotte told me over a secure line from a budget hotel I'd paid cash for, her voice firm with excitement. "I've transferred the files to a secure server. Agent Morales confirmed they've traced 2 shell companies already." "Is Mom safe?" I asked, watching raindrops trace patterns down the window. "Martha arranged secure transportation yesterday," Charlotte answered. "They've doubled security." "He's going to keep coming after me," I said, checking headlights. "That's what cornered predators do," Charlotte replied. "But evidence doesn't disappear just because Karen wants it to." I remembered the countless times Karen's disapproval silenced me, how her raised eyebrow could redirect an entire neighborhood's trajectory. "She taught me to fear her," I whispered. "Now I'll teach her to fear the truth." 2 days later, Karen called an emergency board meeting at Aunt Susan's. I didn't attend, but details reached me through Susan's furious call afterward. "She had the nerve to say you're unwell with grief," Susan fumed. "Talked about temporary guardianship proceedings. Brittany, you're not yourself and need supervision." "What did everyone say?" I asked, pacing my 3rd hotel room in 5 days. "Dr. Lavin refused to sign anything, said he'd examined you after the funeral and found you perfectly sound." And I asked some pointed questions about her relationship with Miranda. The timing seemed convenient. I smiled, faintly picturing Karen's face as her compliant board questioned her. "There's more," Susan continued. 3 board members received anonymous emails about financial irregularities. Karen is furious, demanding an investigation into espionage. Charlotte called that evening triumphant. "We filed an emergency injunction against the guardianship attempt." Martha provided a sworn statement about the medication tampering. They can't touch you legally now. Even better news arrived the following day. Eleanor recorded a video testimony with the DA. Agent Morales told me during our secure call, "We're ready to move on the financial charges, but we need you at the safe house. A car will pick you up at 8 tonight." The black sedan no longer followed me. Karen's attention diverted by the legal storm. In its place, an unmarked vehicle maintained discreet distance. I watched Emerald Meadows recede in the rearview rain, washing the windows as we headed toward the safe house. My phone buzzed with news notifications. HOA stock equivalent property values dropping 17% on governance concerns. Another text from Karen. "This can all go away, Brittany. One meeting. That's all I asked." I didn't respond. File 5, exactly 1,000 words. The next morning brought a district attorney subpoena for Karen's financial records. According to Charlotte's update, 3 board members requested an emergency meeting. Miranda had deleted all her social media photos with Karen. Martha told me when I finally arrived at the safe house, exhaustion washing over me. She's distancing herself, rats deserting the sinking ship. Mom waited inside, pale, but standing, eyes bright with resolve. For the first time since the funeral, we embraced planning our final confrontation while rain tapped the windows. That evening, an unexpected text arrived from Miranda. "She's not who I thought she was. Be careful." Agent Morales updated us as darkness fell. Karen appeared on the local news segment today, looked disheveled, kept losing her train of thought. "She's liquidating accounts, Brittany, making preparations to flee." Mom and I exchanged glances, both recognizing the cornered animal. I think of all the times Karen Mitchell made residents run from her, all the lives disrupted by her calculated cruelty. "She's not running from this," I said, finally feeling strength replace fear. "Not from us." 2 days later, Karen's attorney slid a thick manila folder across the polished conference table. His voice professionally detached, but eyes betraying calculation. "A reasonable settlement offer, Miss Thompson. Sign a non-disclosure, drop all allegations, and your accounts will be restored immediately." He adjusted his tie. "Your position in the neighborhood awaits your return." Karen is eager to put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind everyone. I left the folder untouched. Rain streamed down the windows, casting wavering shadows across the document that would erase Mom's truth. "Unfortunate misunderstanding," I repeated, tasting bitterness. "Is that what we're calling attempted murder now?" The attorney's smile tightened. "Karen asked me to remind you she's prepared for years of litigation. She's devastated by your accusations." The conference room door opened. Uncle David entered, Karen's oldest ally, face a mask of practiced concern. "Brittany, please think about what you're doing to the community." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Karen hasn't slept in weeks. She misses the harmony." I stood, gathering my coat. "Tell her I said hello." Back at the safe house, Charlotte paced phone to her ear, expression darkening. "The judge delayed the arrest warrant," she said, setting the phone down. "They need additional evidence linking Karen directly to the medication tampering." Mom looked up from her tea, face pale. "How much more evidence do they need? We have the recordings, the offshore accounts." "Martha's reputation has been temporarily suspended pending investigation," Charlotte interrupted gently. "And Miranda has disappeared along with some key documents." Mom's hands began to tremble. Weeks of hiding had worn her thin. The constant vigilance, the stress of playing dead while Karen lived freely showed in new lines around her eyes. "There's more," Charlotte continued, avoiding my gaze. "Karen's legal team has filed motions to access cell tower data from this property. They're getting close, Brittany." Mom set down her cup with a clatter. "I can't hide forever." My heart, she pressed a hand to her chest, breathing shallow. "The medication I'm on now isn't enough. I need to see my regular doctor." I watched rain streak the window, thinking of all the times I'd acquiesced to Karen's will, all the times I swallowed my words to keep peace. The pattern stretched back through my entire life, a daughter trained to yield to shrink. "We're done hiding," I announced, the decision crystallizing. Mom looked up sharply. What are you planning? Exactly what she fears most. I met her eyes steadily. The truth. 2 nights later, headlights cut through sheets of rain sweeping across the safe house windows as a car pulled into the gravel driveway. Mom retreated to the hallway out of sight, but within earshot. Charlotte stood ready with her phone, Agent Morales, on speed dial. The pounding on the door reverberated. Karen's voice bellowed through the wood. Open up, Brittany. Let's end this game. I counted to 10, breathing deeply, then opened the door. Rain lashed sideways, soaking Karen within seconds. Her tailored pantsuit clung to her frame, normally perfect bob plastered against her forehead. Despite disheveled appearance, power still radiated the same intimidating energy that kept the neighborhood compliant for years. I stepped back, allowing entry, saying nothing. She burst in trailing rainwater. You've destroyed everything. Her voice shook with fury. Years of work, my reputation, the community, all because you couldn't simply sign the papers. I maintained eye contact, refusing to look away as I once would have. Is that why you're here? For my signature? You don't understand what's at stake? She ran a hand through wet hair, pacing the small living room. Your mother was going to ruin everything I built. She never understood the necessary sacrifices for neighborhood harmony. The voice from the hallway stopped her mid-sentence. Karen froze, color draining as Mom stepped into the light. She looked frail but resolute. You try to erase me, Mom said quietly. Karen stared as if seeing a ghost, which in her mind she was. You don't understand what she took from me, Karen whispered hoarsely. Mom took another step. You took everything. Karen's composure fractured with a guttural sound. She lunged toward Mom. Before she reached her, the front door burst open. Authorities flooded the room, led by Agent Morales, weapons drawn. Through the rain-streaked window, I glimpsed Miranda, watching from a car across the street, face pale. Karen Mitchell Morales announced clearly, You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and attempted homicide. As they handcuffed her, I stepped closer, meeting her eyes one final time. You were under investigation the moment you moved that money offshore. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the transfers? I'm an architect, Karen. I noticed details. Mom approached, slowly, voice steady. You destroyed yourself. Charlotte entered with a thick evidence binder. We have everything, Karen. Miranda has agreed to cooperate as a state's witness. Agent Morales read the charges while an officer documented the arrest. Offshore accounts totaling $4.8 million in fraudulent transfers. Phone recordings where you stated, and I quote, she's worth more dead than alive. Medication tampering documented by Nurse Keegan. Karen looked smaller, somehow shoulders hunched as the gravity sank in. Her eyes found mine, a desperate appeal. I'm still your president, she said, voice barely audible above the rain. I studied her face, the woman I'd feared and obeyed my entire life. Not anymore. They led her to the waiting vehicle. Miranda's statement had already been recorded, full confession for reduced charges. Mom watched from the doorway, supported by Charlotte, as the car disappeared into the storm. It's finally over, Mom whispered, trembling with relief and exhaustion. I put my arm around her shoulders, feeling the fragility and the strength. Lightning flashed, illuminating our reflection. Mother and daughter survivors together. My phone buzzed with a text from Martha. This isn't over. Trial next. Rain tapped the courthouse windows as I sat beside Mom in the front row. The courtroom felt lighter than it should despite 6 months of wait. At the defense table, Karen slumped, unshaven, hollow-eyed in her orange jumpsuit. I barely recognized her. The prosecutor closed her binder with a decisive thump. The state has demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that Karen Mitchell attempted to murder her neighbor, committed financial fraud, and manipulated evidence. Mom squeezed my hand as Charlotte approached the stand with final evidence. I watched the jury's faces as she displayed the flash drive contents, offshore transfers, shell companies, and the photo of Mom with that hateful red X. When my turn came, I walked to the stand without trembling. The combination to Karen's safe was my mother's birthday. I testified, meeting her gaze directly. She never imagined I would use that knowledge against her. The jury deliberated only 4 hours. When they returned, the foreman's voice echoed. On all counts, we find the defendant guilty. 27 years, no possibility of parole for 18. Numbers that meant Karen would be an old woman before she breathed free air again. Later, Mom and I pushed through the courthouse doors, facing reporters and camera flashes. Rain fell steadily, but neither of us bothered with umbrellas. Mom tilted her face upward, letting droplets wash over her skin. Different rain this time, she said softly. I looked at her profile, strong and serene. Different us. A reporter shoved a microphone toward Mom. Mrs. Thompson, your former president, claimed in her final statement she did it all for the community. Any response? Mom straightened. Some chapters need to end before others can begin. We drove along the coastal highway toward our new home, windows cracked despite the weather scent of pine and salt filling the car. She made me believe strength was control, I said, watching raindrops race across the window. That standing up for myself meant hurting others. Mom turned toward me, and now I know the difference between power and strength. The judge's order still felt surreal. $3.2 million of seized assets directed to fund the Haven Project, the nonprofit Mom established to help residents escape HOA financial abuse. Not everything Karen took, but enough to start building something that mattered. Our coastal home appeared around the bend, weathered cedar shingles glowing warm against the gray sky. Inside, paintings leaned against walls waiting to be hung. Mom's work for her gallery, reopening next month. In the studio, overlooking the ocean, architectural plans for the Haven Project's first building spread across my drafting table. Martha visited the following weekend, bringing news her nursing license fully restored. She joined us on the porch with mugs of coffee as Charlotte's car pulled in. First celebration of many, Charlotte said, producing champagne. The Haven Project's first client signed a lease on her new storefront yesterday. I thought of the young woman who approached me after my speech at the shelter last month, eyes brimming. You gave me hope, she'd whispered. Hope is just the beginning, I told her. That evening, Mom and I sat on the porch watching sunset paint the ocean copper. Wind rustled coastal pines as night approached. I've always wondered, I said, wrapping hand around my mug. Who sent that text that night at the cemetery from your phone? Mom smiled softly. It was Martha. She used my old phone. I nodded slowly. Then she saved both of us. My phone rang, a reporter asking about Karen's appeal. I declined politely. We don't need revenge to win, I told Mom after hanging up. Just the truth. Morning arrived with unusual clarity. No rain today. Mom and I shared coffee on the porch as dawn spread across the water. The gallery opens in 3 weeks, she said, pride evident. I glanced at my laptop, open to praise for my latest architectural project, no longer in Karen's shadow, but standing in my own light. On the screen, applications from 3 more states requesting Haven Project branches. I whispered into the morning wind, an old habit from the funeral, now carrying different weight. Good morning, Mom. She smiled understanding. For the first time since that rainy day at the cemetery, the sea before us was perfectly calm.